All right. So a couple of like trends that you need to know in the United States would be, this is sort of like a graph that shows like where immigrants are coming from to the U.S. over time. This is from the 1820s to around now. And there's like a couple of trends that are really worth knowing. So, for example, in the early part of the 19th century, so in this time period, let me turn on this little, I think you can see this, yeah? Yeah, okay. So in this time period right here, this like 1830s to 1840s, this is like this wave of migration mostly came from Western Europe. So you can see Ireland, Germany, UK, I guess Canada is part of that a little bit. But right here is mostly coming from Western Europe. Then that will start to decline. The reason why Ireland right here peaks so much is because of the Irish potato famine. These other places here, Germany has a revolution right here in 1848. That would be a reason for a peak right there. And then Germany unifies over here, reasons for a peak over here in the 1880s. Then it flips. So knowing that like the earlier migrants to the US tended to be from Western Europe. So if you're writing this down, write that down. Then the shift here, this is where migrants tend to be from Eastern Europe. So it totally shifts, Eastern and Southern Europe. So you see Italy, Russia, Hungary, we've got Mexico will start in here. Canada is always going to be part of it because it's close. But the shift right here is that Western Europe was kind of no more. And then here is when Eastern Europe starts flowing in. Okay, so right around the turn of the century is when that happens. During the World Wars, there is a lot of movement right after, for sure. But like in that in-between time, this right here is so low because of the Depression, right? So while the United States is in a depression, there's no opportunity here for the people who are already here. They're, if I'm stuck, the Depression was global, but if I'm stuck someplace else, I'm not going to go to the US while I can't find a job there. So there wasn't a lot of immigration to the US in this time. Within the US, there was a ton, but to the US, not so much. Okay, so then we got here. So obviously Germany after World War II, same with Hungary, with Eastern Europe, everyone's kind of migrating. Now the trends are more Southeast Asia and Latin America. So Mexico is like far and away has, most immigrants that come to the United States are from Mexico. However, the next bigger ones are China, are Philippines, Vietnam. Vietnam will be a big one right in here because of the Vietnamese War. So, again, it kind of goes Western Europe, South and Eastern Europe, and then Latin America and Asia is more now. Okay, let me just check. All right, I think I skipped one by accident. Okay, so countries can affect migration in two ways. They can encourage it or discourage it, right? They can put up programs and policies that will encourage people to move to their state, their country, their city, or they can put up policies that ban it or discourage it. Don't come here, right? So some examples of policies to encourage migrations would be the Homestead Act. This is in 1862. It's literally, if you move to this land, we'll give you the land for free if you will build on it for a certain amount of years. I think at 5 years. So a lot of people moved. Iowa, Nebraska, a lot of the like Western, Midwest and West was populated because of that. If I'm in this city, it's overcrowded, and you're telling me you'll give me, what does it say? It's super cheap or free. So you're telling me you'll give me land. All I got to do is move there and work the land. Great. I'm in, right? Another example would be guest worker programs. So a lot of countries do this where there's programs. So like they'll incentivize people to move temporarily, come work here for, X amount of months, and then you'll go back to your country and you'll make more here, right? So there's a lot of these programs in like in Saudi Arabia, in the United Arab Emirates, UAE. I think in the US, I'm actually not sure. So then, of course, policies to limit migrations. So the US is pretty notorious for these because our history tends to be xenophobic, where we have this like fear of outsiders. So, one example would be the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, where first California did it, and then the federal government was like, that's a great idea, we'll do that too, where they literally banned all immigration coming from China. Another example would be the quotas, 1921 and 1924. What's interesting about this is what they did. I'm going to go back to this to show you what they did. What they did, so 1921, and this is another reason why you have this dip too. So the Depression is part of it, but it's also like now there's laws that limit migration. It's probably a bigger part of it, if I had to guess. What they did is 1921, they said, okay, we're gonna figure out we're going to look at the number of immigrants coming to the U.S. and where they're coming from. And we're going to say, okay, every year, we're going to apply a quota. So I'm not explaining this very well. So, for example, in 1921, they based their numbers off of 1890 or 1880, right around here. Said, okay, now look, this many Germans came in, or Germans were X% of all immigrants that came in. So we're going to allow a similar number of Germans to move in. Same thing with, British, Irish, any UK, right? However, that's not who was trying to move then, right? So we're going to apply these quotas based on the census that's 30, 40 years old, when the people who are potentially darker colored skin weren't coming to the US then. We're going to make sure they don't come to the US now, right? You don't have a lot of Chinese immigrants coming because of the Exclusion Act, right? So the numbers of Chinese coming in after the Exclusion Act obviously plummets because they're not allowed. And then they base these quota numbers off of that. Well, there was no Chinese coming then, so we'll make sure that those numbers are low now. So that's pretty much how policies to limit migrations work. That's some of the ones that have happened before. Obviously, we have those again. We have these like ban on Muslim countries. Other countries do the same thing, right? As xenophobia spreads, they have quotas, laws, whatever to limit migration.